And we're back. We were just on with our podcast, but we got a bonus episode tonight. Brought to you live from one of our two favorite Gregs down at Archivist. Hey, look, they're wearing the hat. The logo's on our screen once again. Wah ha 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 ha. Hello. Wood, I'm gonna have to have you introduce yourself to start off, just because people don't necessarily know you, like we
Sure.
do. So, who is
Yeah,
you? What
no,
do you
thank
do?
you. Yeah, the name is Greg Wood. My co-founder's name is also Greg, so I generally go by Wood to try to make it a little less confusing. Um, yeah, so he and I co-founded Archivist. We're doing this thing full time, and what Archivist effectively does is it takes your sessions and turns it into structured data. Now I'll go through exactly what that means and some of the core features. But before that, a little bit about me. I was born and raised in the Bay Area, California, Silicon Valley kind of guy through and through. Got really tired of that rat race, and then fairly recently moved to the Central Coast of California, and then decided to pursue this full time. And it's been an absolute blast. Like just the community, first of all, and then bringing this idea, which we really built to solve our own group's issues of like note taking. And I was the group's dedicated note taker, me and another guy. And even with our best efforts, like things get lost. So we built the first prototype to try to address our own group's needs, and then quickly it has evolved and progressed into what it is today. We had an awesome group of alpha and beta testers, Rook being one of them, which is fantastic. And then we've since grown and launched, which has been so much fun to bring new features and values and shore up things and improve the quality and all the awesome stuff. So that's a little bit about me and kind of the origin of the company. But yeah, thank you for having me.
Fantastic. For some reason, we got a black box on Twitch. I don't know what's going on here, but your face is half cut off. So I'm gonna make you the big screen for now, because they've seen our faces before. They know what we look like. Um, so yeah, well, we've used Archivist for what was it? 8 months, 7 months, something like that, on pretty much all of our stuff. On several of our campaigns. If you want my personal opinion on it, I really liked it as a DM. It was great. Being able to literally use it to substitute spending 10 minutes typing my summaries and whatnot and putting them on YouTube. Some of them are a little wonky, and it takes a little bit of effort to get into and use appropriately. And you know what? That's just using AI. I pretty much every one of the ones that were goofy, I wrote at the top, this was made by an AI thing. So people knew, like, watching it and reading it, they get to giggle about it later.
Yeah.
So, but for finding characters, doing things, taking notes of stuff, going back later and be like, hey, what did I say? How many items did they pick up in the last session? Those are fantastic uses of Archivist that you can use in real time now. And it's even better than we were using it a month or two ago. So we're kind of getting into that tonight. So I'm going to let you chit chat about your baby. Tell us
Yeah.
about Archivist and where it's at now.
No, for sure. Thank you for the platform. So yeah, I was thinking about we'd walk through this in a couple of different phases, quote unquote. Nothing overly formal. I'm just going to share my screen, which will be the actual app itself. We'll kind of walk through core features, and then certainly get into the how does it actually work and sort of best practices, things like that. So let me go ahead and pull it up, and then we can walk through. Let's go entire screen. Let's go with this guy, the big one. Let's make sure everyone can see that.
Click, clicky to watch you the screen. Okay, we got full screen. We can see it.
Perfect. All right. So this is the app. We're in a demo world. So again, starting with like core features, what this really is. You play a session as you normally do. Archivist gets that data. We'll talk about how we do that, but we get that data and we provide structured output that is in a number of different things that I'll talk through. So first off, and the most easy is to understand would be it writes a summary for you. So as an example, this is a timeline view here. There's 3 sessions in this demo world, just in this accordion view here. Then there's the summary, which is AI driven, like Rook had mentioned, that is really a narrative recap of what effectively happened. It's designed essentially to be something that can be read to a group, and it's also customizable. So if you want to give it a certain tone, or even if you want to feed it some context about your style or your preference, or if you want it in bullet points and say not in this flowery language, you can do that and you can customize it. But that's the idea. So you get a summary that is sort of like what I call table stakes for any sort of note taking device. This is meant to be the thing that you can read at the top of that next session to recap. Here's what happened last session. Um, so that's really the basics. Then that's the narrative output. There's timeline. That's the tab we're on here. We'll walk through across these fairly quickly. But timeline is a structured outline, effectively, of your story. And so let's just expand one of the sessions here. This is the first one. It's in 3 different hierarchies. You can see there's major, minor, and then step. So step is really that granular. I'm going to hide some of these things here. Steps are play by play. It's very granular, very specific, and that's intentional. player X did this, player Y did that, and so on. That's helpful to really get into the weeds. A lot of folks like looking at just the minor beats, which you can see I'm kind of filtering and toggling them on and off. Minor are the summaries of the steps within. Let me actually bring back the steps so you can see like the ratio roughly is about 3 to 7 or so steps per minor beat. And then there's major beats. There's generally about 2 to 3 to 4 per session. And those are essentially the recaps of the minor beats within. So that's timeline. Again, it's supposed to be structured, really kind of like different levels of aggregation of your data right back at you. But if you wanted sort of this really succinct recap of like what happened in this session, 4 major beats, you could read through these real quick and get kind of reminded, oh yeah, this is the celebration episode. There was a time loop. There were a couple elements that happened in the party. You had to gain some keys. I'm just kind of reminding myself this is a real thing that we ran about a year and a half ago. And then there's final confrontation that they had. Like that's just sort of the beats of what really happened at very high level. And again, you can drill down quite a bit further. So where the session summary on the right-hand side is that narrative recap, timeline is that structured outline with user flexibility to dive in deeper or level up if you'd like. So pause there, just make sure that kind of makes sense. If there's any questions on that. All good? Cool. So the next things we'll walk through actually are kind of 4 things together. And there are 4 different tabs: characters, items, locations, and factions. We're calling that effectively our compendium. We're going to rebrand this and actually kind of try to consolidate this a little bit. But compendium entries. So if an entity or a compendium entry happens in your session, we're going to capture that, categorize it in one of those 4, and we're going to write an entry for it. I'll flip to the card in a second, but I'll also say we do have this data at campaign level, which is what we're looking at here. In each session, we're looking at this time loop revelry. It's session 1, the session title here. The campaign compendium has all of these entities that are tagged to it as well. So you can look at it. You can dive deep into a session. You can look at a campaign level. We try to make it flexible for the user to engage how they would like.
So I do have a question at this point to kind of go through, because
Please.
you can assign these entities or characters to real people, right? You can, when you throw it into your Discord, you can say, hey, Jared here is assigned to this character, and this character because he's voicing those 3. How do you make sure it doesn't remake the same character 6 different times every time he slightly changes his accent because we're people and, sometimes we have colds?
Yeah. So you're talking about a lovely problem that we have with named entity recognition, which essentially is what you were talking about in assigning real people to their characters. We call that cast, or configuring your cast. So Greg Wood plays the character of Joe Schmo. That's information and data that we feed to the model, and it knows that if Greg gets referenced in the transcript, whether it's in a speaker label or not, it knows Greg is actually Joe Schmo and playing in game. The other things we look at is name comparisons if it's Joe Schmo and with speech to text, because that's how we do it mostly for whether it's Discord Live or audio upload. There's mistranscribings or misspellings, and so we look at names. We do some fuzzy matching. I won't get too detailed into how we actually do that, and also semantic similarity of the description. So if someone is using a different voice and they're playing the same character, but they're doing a different element or different thing in a certain session that they were, say, at the prior, if it's close enough, we're going to flag that as a merge, and we're going to say, oh, it's the same character and not Joe Schmo, Joe Schmeith, Joe Smith, and so on. So that all effectively gets captured as the one. And I'll show you what that looks like actually when you get through the session review process. But that's effectively how we're able to do it. 2 ways to be more succinct to answer your question directly. It's names and then semantics. The semantics of the description of that entity is how we merge them together.
Fantastic.
Cool. So let's go to the character tab. The other 3 tabs of items, factions, and locations are all very similar. So we'll spend most of the time here and we'll kind of gloss over those. But the idea is you talk about a character in your session, we capture it, categorize it, and write a description about it. So like the silly example I like to always mention that probably all of us are familiar with, or many of us are, is the party goes into the tavern and their GM's trying to make them go to do the thing, like the actual, like go on the quest. And they're like, no, I want to talk to that guy. What's his name? Like, oh, it's Boblin. It's Boblin the Goblin, whatever. Like those off the fly, like just NPCs that get created, they get captured here. So you don't have to worry about writing that note. You don't have to worry about thinking about that down the road. Like Archivist is already going to capture it and create that entity for them in that case. So, like I mentioned before, if it happens in your session, we'll capture it and categorize it and write that description for it. So we've added a couple images here, but generally we haven't done a ton in this demo world because it's totally optional to have images if you would like. But let's say we want to look into just the PCs. Every entity, in this case, the PCs have their own card as well. You can update imagery, edit their descriptions, whatever you would like, feed in a backstory. You have the ability to customize. But totally optional. Everything you see here was written and captured by the AI and written for the user. So you don't need to actually do anything. Again, the whole idea is you play your session, Archivist captures it, writes that description for you, and effectively keeps that progression as the characters continue to show up in the story. A couple of elements actually that I call out that are certainly new look and relatively new for really kind of all Archivist users are this element of tagging or item tagging, or excuse me, entity tagging. So you see these highlights here on the screen. These are other tags. These are tags to other entities that are named entities within the story. So there's a hover card functionality. You can get kind of a quick preview, like what is Castle Keep Hollow. You could, if I click this, it would navigate right to that page as well. So it helps in sort of that reminder of like who was this thing or what was this thing, and it creates this relationship. And then we have a new data studio that I'll walk through pretty briefly in a few minutes here, but that can visualize these relationships and get you kind of reminded, oh yeah, this is when this character showed up, or maybe I thought they were more prevalent than they actually were. Anyway, I don't want to go too in the weeds on that now because we'll get into that later, but it's a new fun way to kind of ingest and understand your story as it unfolds.
So I have another follow up question. Again,
Yeah.
for clarification on the character bits. What about with characters that have been there for a long time? So if we're playing a game and it goes 30+ sessions, right? Something that we would all consider a long game. Uh,
Yeah.
you're constantly adding to your character. How can it continue being detailed, or does it keep it to a paragraph or two of like the important stuff, or does it just keep it on background? Like how does it
Yeah.
determine what information to throw into your new character?
Yeah. So in essence, what we're doing when we flag a merge. So in this example, like the PCs are the easiest example. They were there every single session. They're in session one. They're in session two. In session two, we're going to look at what was their prior description from the first session. What was their description based on the current session at being session two, and it's going to merge those. Session three, it's going to do the same thing. What was the prior? What's the current? And it's going to merge them, and so on and so forth. So you do that 30 times. It's going to keep doing that. It will naturally need to and probably want to gloss over some things unless you really want this like really painful, painstaking, detailed, granular summary. But that's the default setting. If you as the user wanted to have that really detailed, nuanced thing, you can actually customize with a generated prompt saying, hey, spare no detail, include everything, keep it going. You can do that now. You can say, hey, show me everything. Don't truncate. There's no token limit. You can effectively just like ask for everything. I wouldn't necessarily recommend it unless you're really, really super duper into your character and you want to read that at bedtime to help you fall asleep. But you can. Not the default setting because it's just kind of too painful to read through. At least I think, even for my characters, like it's just a lot of detail. The opposite is also true. If you really want it to be, give me 4 sentences. Give me like the origin, 2 main arcs that this character has, and where they are now. You can also do that, and so it'll just be succinct in write it in bullet points instead of that paragraph form. It's up to you, the user, to kind of configure how you want.
So I have a couple questions, if that's all right.
Please. Yeah.
So obviously, this compiles a very nice little spreadsheet and database for your campaign. I wanted to know, as the user, do you have the ability to go through and make any kind of editations or any additions of your own to Archivist's uh, data load, as I guess it were, or is it all just dependent on what actually happens in a session?
Yeah, you can modify and customize effectively anything. Actually, those knobs and pulls are turned off here because I'm in the demo world, and we share this for all the initial users. I will demo that in our own personal world in a few minutes, but the short answer is you can edit anything. You can upload, even we haven't gotten there yet, but this lore tab is where you can upload, say, homebrew rules or world history and context. All of that kind of feeds into the campaign knowledge base that you can then access via the chatbot, which I haven't gotten to yet either. But you have full customization and control over this. Yeah, we're the idea again is really you play your session, we capture the details and give it back to you, but it's your data and you can customize it and tweak it and change it and curate it however you would like. So you have full control over that output.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
The other question I had is the images. Were those generated by Archivist as well, or were those generated with a different AI program?
These ones were Archivist. There is an option for AI image gen baked in. If you're anti AI images, you actually can turn that setting off and not allow your players. We haven't gotten there yet, but you can invite your players into Archivist as well if you would like. You can also upload images as well. So totally up to you.
Okay, that's all I had for now.
Cool. All right. So I won't get into the weeds. There are different view modes for all these things you can search. That's just more UI elements. But characters, items, locations, and factions are the same. Let me just jump to locations real quick. Just to give you a quick example of what this looks like, there are parent-child relationships. You can establish a bit of a hierarchy there, and that will come into play in a future release on our data viz as our data visualization, as I'll detail. And then factions. Again, this is really brief here in that demo world, but it's just a combination of characters or entities that have a shared common goal would get flagged as a faction. So same idea. All four of those work the same as part of the compendium in creating those entries. Um, you can create them yourself if you want. There's a button I'll show when I get to our own personal world. You can add entries if you would like yourself. You can delete, you can reclass, you can kind of shape and curate all you want. But the minimum effort would be hey, just Archivist, take the wheel and handle it. It'll go ahead and do these things, but you have full control and autonomy to do whatever you would like. All right, let's jump to moments. A new element. So we've covered the summary, the timeline, the compendium being those four. Now, moments are effectively what I kind of maybe would call a highlight. They're a session highlight. These are things, ideally, that are memorable in your given session. This is a lovely, it's a good and bad application of AI, and not really, I shouldn't really say bad, but only in the sense that what's good to me is going to be not necessarily good to everyone else. And what's good to say Rook is not going to be, say, maybe good for the other Greg, and so on. So it's preferences. But because of that, we attempt to serve up about 15 to 20 memorable moments, and I'm giving air quotes here because they're not always memorable to you in your style, of things that would be fun to literally remember and maybe talk about or recount with the party down the road. And this one's been really fun because it's a good one to go back if you're looking at, say, a long 30 session campaign way back in the early sessions, and you're not going to want to probably read the whole session recap that time, but you might just want to quickly scroll through the moments and be reminded, like, oh yeah, that was that cool thing that happened. So generally, they're acts of like badassery in combat, or tense exchanges in say a negotiation, something particularly funny. It's going to try to capture and flag those for you, and then you can edit them, tweak them, and adjust them as you would need. And we tag entities to them, which is kind of cool. So in this case, Tim Rogers is tagged in this entity. What you can do, you can filter and say, I want to look at all the moments that Tim was in. So your players like to come in and be like, what's the story through my character's eyes? And they'll filter on, say, Tim, and be like, oh, cool. That's like, those are the impactful, memorable things that Tim had done. So it's a cool way to sort of revisit the story in that sense. But those are moments. If we're good there, let me jump to lore. Okay, so lore. This has been a fun one to allow folks that are doing homebrew or have some other important context for their world to feed that information as helpful context to Archivist. And so, in essence, it is, well, hopefully what it sounds, in the sense that if you have something that is sort of super important or historical that you need to get in there, or even just like as simple as a shop list, where, say, you ending a session at a shopkeep and you want to give your players like, hey, browse this list and ask the chatbot about the items, you can do that. Just upload the lore doc, and then that's accessible by the chatbot, which is accessed in this little button down here, and you can just ask a question, whatever that may be. So this can be, simple fact recall. I'll just demo that real quick. What was the ship captain? If I could spell. Simple fact recall. It can be reminders on story beats, but you can also, if you want, you can use it to ideate ideas. Like, help me come up with an idea for the ship, the boat name. Actually, let's do that. What is an idea?
And just as a note from personal experience of using the chatbot, it is very forgiving on spelling, as long as you're not trying to find a specific name of something.
Yeah, no, we try to be. There's the wandering wave. Hey, that works. Maybe it's cool. Maybe it's not. You could follow up, and it's conversational in the essence here. It knows we're talking about the ship now, and say, give me 5 more ideas. Give me 20 more ideas. Make them more campy. Make them tie into the PC's names. You can do things like that, and that's really the power of the Archivist chatbot, is that it has the context for your world, and so it's going to give you a higher quality answer than, say, going to a different LLM that's outside, doesn't really have your context unless you fed it a bunch of project files and things like that. And even then, I've personally found it to be somewhat lacking. So the opportunities are kind of endless. It feels a little silly to say, but it's kind of endless for what the chatbot can do. But the thing to remember is it has your entire campaign in its memory. So you can ask whatever questions you want. Again, whether it's fact recall, whether it's a story beat, like what was the nature of the dialogue between entity X and Y, whether it's help me brainstorm something. Another fun example I used to give as well is, even if you make a ruling kind of off the cuff, as many DMs are doing, it'll remember what that ruling was. So you can be, it's a different campaign, so this module won't have it. But it could be like, what was the homebrew ruling to weaponize the ice flower in the meadow? It'll be like, oh yeah, 2 sessions ago you did this, this, and this, and that was it. So you don't have to relitigate that with your party and kind of think through that thing. Um, the other cool element I'll say about this as well, although again there's a ton, is that there's real time transcription. If you are doing this on Discord, and we have a bot that can join your Discord server, it's transcribing in real time. And so then in real time, you or your players can actually ask, hey, what happened in the last 5 minutes? Like you could literally go take a phone call, do your business or whatever, come back and just get caught up. Instead of having to be like, hey, DM, sorry, I had to step away. Remind me of what just happened. You can literally self-serve answers as a player, or even if you forget whatever it is. So it's powerful in that sense to keep like session flow going. Um, that real-time transcription and then real-time answers as well. So that is the chatbot. We call it Ask Archivist, but that's the campaign chatbot.
Yeah, I would
Okay.
also like to throw in there kind of positive commentary on that. I can't tell you how many times that same Power Ranger campaign information on us while we were playing our sessions of just like, what was the name of the crystal thing we were using, or what enemy did we fight last week? Instantaneous had the information. What was the ruling for how this item worked? Immediately recalled it, pulled it up. This is what it said. Perfect.
Love it. No, good to hear. Okay, let's quickly do Data Studio. This is totally something new. Brooke, you haven't seen this one quite yet. It's fairly hot off the press, maybe about a month old. But this is a visualization of your relationships in your world. So it's a bit of a mess here. This is the playground view. We have some structured views, but essentially all those little tags we were seeing, like in the summary of where it tagged Tim Rogers or Castle Keep Hollow, those are relationships that are being represented. And there's this nice little physics engine that runs this thing, which is sort of fun just to click around and play in. But from a visualization perspective, there's some views that we've curated to help kind of understand what's the most important stuff going on with your world. So this one is just what I call top entities. It has the most tagged entities. Let me make this a little bit bigger. The most tagged entities on the right. In this case, there's characters at the top, locations in the middle, and then factions down below. But it's organized by tag count in sort of this ordinal way. And then these gray dots are the steps. That's the most granular level of the timeline, if you recall, as we've been blasting through this presentation fairly quickly. But effectively, how often did a character come up? Or how often did an entity come up in my story? That is visualized based on the node size, and it's organized in that way just to kind of understand what's going on here. Now, this gets really interesting and powerful when you start applying filters, where if you have 30 sessions in a campaign and you want to look at only a couple of different characters, you can do a relationship map. So let's do a deep dive. By default, this is going to show just the number one tagged entity, but you can add others. Let's just add Tim. And it's going to show how they relate. And so you can add more and kind of build this view that is interesting to you in your story. And a couple other ones, I don't want to burn too much time on this. You can drill down on the specific session that's at campaign level. There's a bunch of knobs and pulls, as I call them here, but you can filter on which sessions you would like. But my favorite view is in the timeline deep dive. And this, let's do story arc, because this is truly my favorite. What this is looking at is your timeline from left to right, starting here, moving along to the right, of all those steps. So as you start the session on the left and end the session on the right, where do the entities come up? And this is just one session here, but you could do this on presumably the entire campaign. And you would understand, all right, so the Yuan T were pretty central because they're tagged a bunch and they're right in the middle. While Gripply Village or the Gripply as a faction were only in the beginning. And so you should remember like some of those things that, oh yeah, they were important at the beginning and they didn't really come in at the end. And again, as you start adding more sessions and layering on a few things here, it's a cool way to visualize what actually happened in that session and when were things when were entities or compendium entries participating in the story. Another fun one that I use it to do is to kind of self-grade my PCs on how involved was I. Was I like pretty distracted during the session? And then I can actually see, oh yeah, I was, because I was in the beginning and I kind of like zoned out a little bit near the middle and I came back at the end. So you can see like, oh, if there's an entity or if your PC is only involved, certainly say on like the front half versus the back half, you probably weren't as engaged or involved. And of course, anyone can see that. The DM could even be like, hey, great job staying engaged throughout because, you were tagged literally in steps throughout the entire story versus the opposite. So it's a fun way to visualize and go through. And again, there's a ton of different filters and knobs and pulls that are available. But I don't want to burn a lot of time on that. So hopefully that's kind of visually interesting at a minimum and actually can be leading to some good insights for the campaign.
I'm just over here enjoying the constantly strobing lights, just like, yeah, that's itching the right parts of the brain.
Yeah. There's a nice little aesthetic to it for sure. Although we do turn these things off for like large campaigns, it'll burn your memory up in your browser. But it is a fun one for some of the shorter campaigns. Cool. So that's Data Studio. So very, very short recap. Those are the core features, as I call it. You get a recap for every summary, for every session. What I didn't mention is that every session starting on the second one gets a campaign summary. And so we update the campaign level summary every time, and we operate that campaign level. So every session gets the session summary. You also have a campaign summary. You have a timeline. That's what this is on the screen here, the 3 levels of sort of organized, structured output of what actually happened play by play. There's the compendium entries, the characters, factions, locations, and items. Those key highlights, which we call moments. You can upload lore to your heart's content. You got the chatbot. You got the Data Studio. Those are the key things. And one other cool thing I actually do want to show you before I jump into how does this all kind of work and get into the session review process is this other fun feature. I think it's folks enjoy this the most out of all the things we have. It's called, we call session handout. I'll generate it right now in real time if I would left click. And we got a few themes here. But what I'm effectively doing is saying, hey, generate a formatted 2-page PDF that is a recap for the session I just ran, and add a bunch of cool, useful information. And we'll walk through what that is. So it's literally updating it right now. You can see it just kind of streaming the response here. That is now it's almost done. There we go. Okay, there's a couple different themes just to make it easier on the eyes. Let's go to Nightwear. What this is including, again, it's just the one session recap, but this is formatted to literally print out. You can also email it directly to your players, and it has an abbreviated session summary here on the left, an outline, sort of that quick structure of what actually happened, 3 moments that occurred during that session. You can manually pick these if you want, otherwise it's random. Key entity or key encounters in a very quick kind of summary of what happened in those encounters. Entities that were here, character spotlights, notable items, valuable info, party status, and next steps. A lot of information. It all comes through right there, but folks seem to love this thing a ton. And that's sort of oh shoot, I didn't have time to prep. Let me generate this thing in one click, pass it out. It scratches that itch and really kind of just saves folks a ton of time. And players have given a lot of tremendous feedback to their GMs who've given it to us, saying like, that's just an awesome way to kind of remember what really happened in that session with all these slices and dices that are provided. So that is session handout. Again, it's formatted and ready to share kind of with that one click. Cool. So let's get into, let me actually go to a different campaign. Let's go to my personal one. All right, let's go here. And I'll demo effectively how it works. So we walk through the core features, but so what? Like, how do we actually do this thing? So the first step is going to be create a campaign. Let's actually back out and do that. I'll just show you quickly what that looks like. You hit this create new campaign button. There's 3 steps to it. You add basic info. The campaign name is, whatever. The description is, Tuesday Night Power Rangers or whatever it may be. The system you're playing, the language you're playing, and then you hit create. Oh, it wants me to give something here. So we'll do a placeholder right there. The next 2 steps are, Rook, what you had mentioned in terms of the cast setup, so players versus characters. This is configuring your cast. You add the players, you add their characters. Having the characters' names spelled correctly certainly helps also to avoid spelling errors down the road, and we'll talk through some of those mitigating strategies as well. Speech to text is a fun one, like I had mentioned, to try to wrestle, especially in fantasy names where spellings can be pretty challenging. But you put in, player Greg Wood plays Joe Smith, add until your entire party is there. That can be edited and changed anytime. So if someone misses a session, you can take them out and say they're not there in that given session. And then the next step is to customize the output. So in this case, there's presets we have, but this is where if you want a really short summary, you can say, give me 5 bullet points for a summary. You would literally write, I want 5 bullets in just normal, everyday language. You don't have to do any sort of prompt engineering here. If you are familiar with AI, this effectively becomes the user input for a prompt, for the prompt flow. But use natural language just to provide effectively guidance to the model and what output you want. Almost everything can be customized, and so you can customize tone, you can customize format. If you want to do AI images, you can customize that as well. But summaries, the chatbot, if you want to have it be like Jarvis from Iron Man or some snarky person, whatever, you can say exactly that. The format or entity descriptions, and then moments or highlights. So again, you can customize however you want. You don't have to. You can leave it blank. There's default system stuff, but if there's a certain style you're going for, that's exactly where you would set it up. So let's just go ahead and hit finish. That is setting up the campaign. That's the whole process. There are more knobs and pulls you can do, but it's totally optional. That can be found in your profile under campaign settings. We won't go through that now. It's not essential. And then to log a session, how does it actually work? You hit create a session. And then there's 5 different ways you can get information into Archivist. We've had tremendous adoption with live recording. That's on Discord. This account isn't connected to Discord, but there's an Archivist bot that joins the server. You all are familiar with that. You've had it for quite some time. The bot will join, listen in. It comes with that live transcription, like I had mentioned, and the chatbot feature comes with it as well. So that's super popular, super common. There's audio upload, which can be from a different online source, and many folks have had a lot of success literally recording with their cell phone at an in-person game and uploading that audio. So totally a really popular option that folks have done just if they're not online and playing at an actual table. Our own group is fortunate enough to get together a whole 2 times a year. We do kind of this nerdy weekend for 3 days and just play nonstop for that weekend. And we just get a quick microphone on the table and just record that stuff and upload it and have a blast. Play by post is all Discord as well. You copy in the starting and end messages of your session, and then text upload can be raw session notes or a transcript upload if you have it. Raw session notes is super popular as well, where if you don't have historical recording, say you have an old campaign and you have hopefully a really good note taker, or maybe even not really a good note taker, you can just upload raw text and it can be like effectively garbage, but just like your best guess of what effectively happened. We've had folks that have literally opened like a tape recorder and just dictated what their memory was of a certain session or of a campaign, transcribed that and uploaded that as raw notes, and they'll extract and provide that same information that you saw before in terms of the summaries and the recaps and the timeline and entities and all those sorts of things. It's not going to hallucinate. We've teased out all that sort of like AI gotcha, but you're not going to get a super in-depth thing if you're only going to upload, say, a small little blurb versus you have a full 4-hour session. Just know that, of course, our whole goal is to not hallucinate. That's not what we're doing. We're giving you your information back to you in a structured way. But anyway, so there's 5 ways: Discord Live, audio upload, play by post, text upload, and text upload is either transcript or raw notes. So you would do that. You can upload a file, and then from there you set a date. You hit finish. Let's actually just upload. I don't have one right there, of course. We'll just do placeholder text. I'm going to literally type that in, and this is going to error out what we want to actually submit it. We want to make sure we're getting real things. There's a minimum, because we want to make sure there's enough semantic density to actually extract a narrative from your story. But once you have enough text in there, you would set a date, confirm or edit your cast, and then literally press create session. So I'm not going to do that because this is garbage and just saying text placeholder isn't an actual session. But that's all it would be. You'd hit that button, and then you've got about 10 minutes to wait while we do the analysis and then give you an output that is effectively the session for you to review. We call it the session recap or session review process, and we'll walk through that in just a moment. But it should be that simple. To recap super quickly, it's 4 steps to upload a session. You pick the method, or not to upload a session, to log a session. You pick the method, Discord or otherwise. You provide the data. If it's Discord, that's done for you. It's just automatically recording once you hit that start command in Discord. Set the date, confirm the cast, done. Get a cup of coffee. 10 minutes later, you'll have your recap. That's the idea. We pause there also just to make sure there's any questions. None. Love it. Cool. Okay. Let's jump into session review because that's really the how does this work element. I actually think in our personal world, I'm sharing the whole screen, right? Do you see Questonomicon up here? I can't see my own screen.
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, good. So I want to make sure I'm not going to just walk through something you can't see. All right, this is our own personal campaign. We got a bunch of stuff in here, and we have a session review that's been completed. So again, this would be after you had uploaded that session. We do Discord Live, so about 10 minutes after we cancel or ended the session, we'd get this notice and say your session is ready to review. And we'll know that because we'll get an email, in-app notification, and we'll see these lovely golden AI symbols that are buttons effectively to say go to your session itself. So we click into that, and the output is effectively going to be the things we just walked through and sort of those core features. This is where you can more easily review and edit it and really look at what has changed. So I'm not going to go through it in painful detail here, but this is that review process for you to have that chance to look at, does this make sense? Do I need to correct anything? Was something weird or broken here? This is really where you can do that. And it's really up to you how detailed you want to get into the weeds. A lot of DMs like going through and say, look at, do the major beats make sense? Quickly go through the session summary. Just give it a glance over. If they have a certain tone they provided and said, I want to have it in bullet points, you would get it already in bullet points. You wouldn't have to regenerate it. If you wanted to regenerate it, you could just type in a natural language prompt here as well. I won't demo it just for the sake of moving on forward, but that's the idea. You can regenerate this in real time if you want. You can make edits and so on, and you can see certainly on screen all those tags that we had talked about, all these highlights, characters are in the blue and the items in the gold and so on. They're all automatically done for you. You as the user can customize and create your own as well if you would like, but it's all done for you. Campaign summary is up to date, and then your compendium entries. All of them are the same, so we'll walk through just characters because there was a question on this one. If it's a new entity or new character in this case that isn't in the story before, they're going to get flagged and shown on this new character tab. In this case, there's a handful. Looks like there's 5 from our session. We went to a different world. But if you're deep into a campaign like we are, we had 9 recurring characters. And so the PCs and also other common NPCs are going to be flagged as well. And here is where you can see that description evolving over time. What was the prior description for this character, Chudley, versus the new one? And then it shows you the edits as well. So you can see exactly what changed. And if you don't like it or you want to make changes, hit the pencil button and you can just make those edits however you would like. If for some reason it's not actually Chudley, you can split this into a new entity and just rename it. You could also delete it if you want, but you have the ability as the user to really edit and delete, reclass, customize as you want. So I won't go through all those actions, but you have that flexibility to do so. Yeah, so that's characters, items, locations, factions. Again, they're all the same. They all operate the same, I should say. And then moments being those highlights. These are the handful of moments from the session. Folks will often like to go through these and make sure they got one for every PC, just to make sure they're captured and can talk about that the next time, or a handful. There are all these little hashtags too, which are kind of funny. If you want to look at conflict or filter down based on some of those things, you have the ability to do so. And then the last one, I hinted at speech to text transcription issues before. There's find replace rules. And this is sort of everyone's best friend who wants things to be spelled correctly. It's a really powerful tool that it's amazing that word processors developed this technology a long time ago, and it's still super helpful today. Meaning, if you have a character, I'll actually pick on Greg's character, my co-founder. He has a character whose name is Eldrick. The models love to spell Eldrick with a K at the end, but he spells it with no K. So Eldric is the name. It always adds a K. We can set up a persistent find replace rule that whenever the transcription adds the K, we just correct it to remove the K, as an example. But a lot of folks will, have 5, 10, 15 rules that they create persistent because the speech to text is going to do its best, but it doesn't know. But then you can set up those rules, and then you fix it one time and never have to fix it again, which is pretty great. So that's what that is for. But that's the idea. Then you go to finish. This is a visual representation effectively of what we just looked at. Did you look at the timeline with these check marks, the entities that have been updated, compendium entries, the moments that are included? One feature I did forget to mention that I will say is if it forgot something or didn't capture something that you wanted it to, you can hit this discover character, give it a natural language prompt. You forgot the shopkeeper or whatever. You can do that, hit submit or hit discover, and then it'll take 15 seconds or so and find the shopkeeper. I would encourage you only to do this if that is a real missing entity, as opposed to something that didn't exist. I was asked a question last week, was like, what if there was a hidden NPC that wasn't mentioned, but I know is the DM? If you were to do that, you would just be inviting hallucination because it's pulling from the transcript. So if it's not in the transcript, you're asking it effectively to hallucinate. There's other ways you could add a character in your campaign, but I wouldn't necessarily do that in the session review because it's going to start fabricating things. Because again, the source data is the transcript. It's the notes that you fed it. So anyway, that's one word of caution. You can do that discover on any of the compendium tabs and also on the moments. You can discover a moment as well. So I won't walk through that, but the same natural language thing. Hey, you forgot, the tense exchange between the king and the party, whatever that is, and then it'll go back and find that and populate a moment for you. So that's the idea. Hit finish, hit complete review. And that whole, once you hit complete review, it's about 15 to 30 seconds to ingest all that data into your campaign level. The chatbot will then be fed that information as well. So it knows, it's aware of that session, and then you're off to the races and running to run your next session or whatever else you need to do. So that's the idea of how it works. Let me just also pause there on session review. That's the high level. I can talk through best practices after this, but any thoughts, comments, questions, things that are weird, cool things, anything?
I have kind of a general question, Greg, if we
Yeah,
can do that right now.
totally.
So you brought up a number of features and being able to check with like consistency and just honestly, it's just so much. But I'm going to condense like a for instance right now. So say you use the functions you mentioned before, and you bring a bunch of like your old campaign notes to Archivist, and you want to just keep the campaign going, but use Archivist to make it run faster or better or smoother, whatever have you. Uh, if there are contradictions, inconsistencies, or paradoxes in your story, your notes, or your world, does Archivist have the ability to kind of bring those to your attention and address them?
You mean if the source data itself has
Yeah.
contradictions?
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I haven't been asked that before, and the answer would be no.
Okay.
Because we're not asking it to do that to analyze. Really, it's more so what is in your notes given back to you. Now, that said, it would be interesting to upload all that information and then ask the chatbot, ask Archivist, hey, what are some inconsistencies in the story that we should think through or should vet through? Like you could possibly do that, and especially if you had a certain thing in mind, like about event X. What are the recounts from the different parties' perspectives? And maybe that's actually part of the story. Like maybe it's a mystery, and suspect one story is something, suspect two story is something else. It would certainly have that, but it's not trained to like extract and say, hey, user, here's some weirdness. It's not necessarily going to do that.
Okay. I was just curious about that because,
Yeah,
like I said, it's all these things are being thrown out at me. That's the thought I had. It's like, so if I had notes, but we're only human, so something may have not been recorded right at some point.
totally. Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say from personal experiences, that's where I've had the hallucinations pop up is when I say, "Hey, we're doing it this way," and that is not how we did it in the previous session. So I just kind of, well, this is the rule we're gonna go with. So again, it's been a bit since we used it, and it looks like it's improved on the hiccups it used to have already. So
Yeah. And sorry, just on that one, you mean like when you were saying something that when you believed it to be something that it wasn't in hindsight?
yeah, so like you go back through your session reviews later and be like, all right, so I said there was 5,000 people that lived in the city, and then the next session I was talking, I was like, and there's 50,000 people that live here, and it would be like, there's 42,000 people or something silly, you know what I mean? It kind of hit
Yeah.
between the two of them or whatever.
Yeah. No, for sure. Yeah, that's an interesting idea potentially to do like a fact reconciliation process, something we could actually throw on our roadmap to consider what that would look like. In theory, in that exact example, the city itself would show in the prior description 5,000, in the new description 50,000, and then you would, in theory, be able to see the diff. 5 became 50, and review that. But if you didn't catch it, like in that one, then it's just going to get overwritten, like the old one. But it also has the transcript from the prior, so the chatbot might source an excerpt of the transcript that said 5 in the new description and then have that ads. So that's an interesting idea. Cool. Any other questions that are top of mind? Awesome. Well, a couple last thoughts just to share that are sort of new-ish features. We have public sharing, and so if you wanted to publish your campaign, many pro DMs like to do that. It's a click of a button. There's a really brief moderation that just goes through our content policy, but it gets hosted on our website, and then you can share it to anyone. No login or anything needed. That's a cool way. You can just share your story with friends, family, or whoever would be interested. And then the other one, we have not yet launched it yet, but it's going to be likely this weekend. We're having a Foundry mod as well. So if you DM online and in Foundry, that data that's in Archivist can be synced into Foundry, and then the reverse. Certainly, if you have something in Foundry, you can port it over to Archivist as well. So so hot off the press, we haven't even actually announced that in our own server yet, but because it's coming and we're having this chat now, I wanted to give that little teaser that it should be a fun way to bring Archivist data into Foundry and also get your world configured in Archivist easier if you're already using something in Foundry to port it over to Archivist. So a fun one. Cool. Well, the last thing I will say is we have a free trial. It's available for anyone. The idea of that is it comes with 2 sessions of any format. We wanted to make it 2 instead of 1 because we operate at campaign level. We try to operate at campaign level, so it's not like a single session in the recap. You can see the feature of merges being done and the entity descriptions building upon one another. You can use the chatbot, get additional information. That's 30 days or 2 sessions. Totally up to you to try it. No commitment or anything, and try that out. And then for anyone in Epic Sages, we'll also have a discount as well. If you do try it and like it and want to convert, we will have a discount that we can share as well. Still working out exactly what that will be and the functionality, but I am just a DM away. So if you are interested, please don't hesitate to reach out, and Brooke will certainly chat. So I make sure I honor that because I want to do that for the community as well. But the first thing is come try it out. We think it's been a lot of fun, and then also we've got a nice active Discord community as well. If you're interested to learn tips, tricks, and just kind of get a sense of that, what we got going on over there. So
All
thank
right.
you so much.
And then I have one more thing, just for transparency's sake, right? As this is a great tool, it's not for free, as you said. You get a couple free sessions, but what are kind of the price lines that you're looking at for people, just so they know what they're getting into before they jump into it head first?
Yeah, totally. So we have 4 tiers that are the most commonly things. We've got some ad hoc or kind of a menu of option things as well. But there's 4 tiers. The cheapest, the most the lowest cost one is what we call the casual tier. That's $10 a month. That is for one campaign and up to 4 sessions. So if you play weekly, it's perfect for you. The highest one is for like kind of a pro D, not a kind of a pro DM who is doing a lot of volume, up to 10 campaigns and 40 sessions a month. And then there's 2 that are in between those 2 marks as well. So that's the idea. The casual group that is playing, our own group, we actually only play twice a month. Sometimes we'll get in a third. We wanted to add a little extra in capacity, quote unquote, on a monthly basis, just so you don't have to like feel like you have to get that add-on, that extra, which we do offer. But so that's what we opted to do, say 4 sessions and not like 2 or 3 in that basic casual tier, quote unquote. But again, that legend tier does scale up 10 campaigns, 40 sessions a month as well. And there's some other bespoke things if there's some super users out there that we've chatted with as well. But that's the idea. And sorry, the other thing, all features come with all of it. There's no like gating behind. There's no premium features. So if you're casual, if you're legend, everyone has access to every feature. So we're not doing some sort of premium feature gating in that sense.
Which is much appreciated, by the way, because I'd be super sad if we didn't get some of the cool stuff because we were only doing casual.
No, totally. I think if we hid the session handout behind a paywall, we would just have a riot on our hands because folks love that thing so much, or like the chatbot, which gives us heartburn because you can accrue tokens on that quite a bit of the cost on that one, but folks love it. We love it. Again, like we built this for our own campaign, our own use case first, and we're still using it today. Like that was this is our own campaign that actually was just walking through in the session review. So I'm not going to hit complete review because I got to actually go through it myself. But yeah, we're users first. Like we love this thing, and when we see pain points or when our users in Discord are like, "Hey, this thing was cool, but what if we did that?" We're like, I love that because I also want that, and then we try to build that pretty quickly. So yeah, it's been a blast to build and develop, and a lot more runway to go.
Well, fantastic. Thank you so much for that. I really appreciate having you back to hang out and chat and talk.
Of course.
Carnival, since you are one community member that had joined us in the Discord, do you have any extra questions, or are you good to go before we wrap things up here and then have our after action review talky silliness? No mic right now. Okay, well that answers all my questions. Okay, but they said they're good. No major questions. So jumping down to you one more time there, Mr. Greg. Do you have any last minute comments for the peeps besides keep an eye on our Discord so we can give out free codes and whatnot for trial stuff and all that fun things?
Yeah, the last one would just be a reaffirmation. Get in there if this seemed interesting to you. Get in there and test it out. Again, it's free, no commitment. Check it out. Whether you have a Discord live session coming up, or even like old campaign notes from a decade ago. That was our first session. Were notes that we had from our very first campaign, which was about 7 years ago. I popped those in there, and that was our Candle Keepers campaign. I demoed very quickly here, and it was super fun just to see what can Archivist kind of output and remember some of those memorable moments or those character arcs that we had. So give it a try and let us know what you think.
Fantastic. All right. Well, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for sharing all the fun stuff with Arcus. I'm super excited about the new updates because they look fantastic.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
So, again, archivist.ai, right, is how you get to the website? MyArchivist.ai. My apologies. Yeah, sorry, that was the old one.
Yep.
MyArchivist.ai get you to their website. They have the free stuff on there. It's a quick page to just jump into. Super easy to use. It's a bit of a setup when you start a campaign, but honestly, once you get into the rolling, you can do it for a long time. We did it with our D&D. We did it with our Rainford Avatar, The Last Airbender. We did it with Power Rangers. We did it with Star Wars. Like we've done a ton of campaigns on it, so it is fantastic and relatively easy to use. And the back end of things for using stuff and things, super good in my opinion. Jared, you also used it as a player. Do you have any comments or last minute praises or hates?
Like I was just before we started going live here, I was just mentioning to Greg, it can sometimes like only because I jumped into two separate campaigns as a player that were already fairly involved. Archivist was a bit overwhelming for my old brain because I'm almost 40, but I was just saying, starting fresh with like something new, it looks very promising as far as like my perspective. So, but yeah, the only hang up I had was a personal one of like, I'm jumping into this mess. What's going on? Oh God.
Yeah, it totally fair. And just on that one, like that's where the customizing the prompts might be helpful too. Just to be like, hey, make sure all character descriptions are no more than one paragraph and 3 sentences, or whatever. Whatever fits your preference. You can totally scrunch it back down and make it more digestible if you want sort of a more recap versus a detailed output. So anyway, get in there and play with it. That's kind of the whole idea.
Right.
Fantastic. Well, thank you guys so much. And again, we'll talk more soon. We're not doing music on the outro tonight because this is a bonus episode. Blah, ha, ha. But with adventure in mind, have a wonderful time. Bye.